She's over me. She caught me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. In my heart, I can't let go, I'm breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess I gotta unmute myself. See, I even do it to myself sometimes, which is really kind of tragic, but it happens. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Paranormal Portal, Bedtime Stories from Beyond. So you have arrived. If you were looking for something else, well, you're in the wrong place. But this is our show, and I hope you guys are ready. Welcome, everybody. You guys are piling in. It's great to see you all, and I don't know. I hope you're all comfortable, got some nice beverage, and you've used the loo, and you're ready to go because, well, it's time for bed. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are right at it now. So hope you guys have enjoyed the last couple bedtime stories. Of course, last night Duke joined us, and we had a great discussion about his outings and the photos that he has taken, and we went over those. Really cool show, a lot of fun, very informative as well. You know, I know there's a lot of people interested in it, but have never actually got out there and done it. So I think shows like that are really good to kind of get people's feet wet with the idea and the things that are looked for, and to see some examples of evidence that has been captured. I think those things can be really powerful. And, you know, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really did. I thought it was a fantastic show. And then, of course, the last Bedtime Stories was just some Sasquatch shows, or stories, rather. And I like doing those as well because I think, you know, it was cool. I heard back from the listener, though. That was all the result. The Sasquatch show on Sunday was the result of a listener going, hey, I love the bedtime stories. I listen all the time, but can we do some shows on Bigfoot? Because I'm kind of bored of the ghosts. I was like, you know, there's no reason we can't. It's just oftentimes they are really the easiest shows to prep for me. And I love all these different phenomena. But, you know, I've had a lot of ghost experiences as well. I've had, you know, only one Sasquatch experience in my life when I was a teenager that I believe is a Sasquatch, but I certainly probably have the most experience in the ghostly realm. So it's a subject I feel like I can talk about ad nauseum and not run out of things to say as well. But there's no reason we can't do other shows as well. So if you guys want to hear some bedtime stories about other topics, please let me know and just email me, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, as well as email me if you have an experience of your very own. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Or if you just want to say hi, or if you have ideas of things you'd like to see on the show that we don't currently do. You know, we have a whole big bucket list of things we want to do. It's just a matter of, creating the resources and the time to make it all happen. But we are, of course, doing 7 shows a week on YouTube. 2 of those are also on TFR and iHeart, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live, and as well as 3 podcasts per week. So, I mean, the dance card is pretty full just for the week-to-week stuff, but we definitely want to continue to stretch the envelope here. So if there are things you'd like to see happen, or you'd like to see more of something, or if there's something that's going on that you're not liking as much, please let me know. I mean, the portal is always a labor of love, and I just enjoy doing all that is that I do, but I am not an expert of the paranormal, nor am I an expert of broadcasting. So if there's something that's going on the show that you think could be different, or you have suggestions, we've gotten some great suggestions from listeners that we've actually implemented on the shows, the bedtime stories being kind of one of them. That they, I got messages that, I like your shows, but I don't have 2 hours, and it'd be cool if you had a shorter show. And it was like, well, why not? So therefore, the bedtime stories became a thing. With the hour format at the most, at least there's enough in there that, story, that people can listen to parts of it and still not feel like they have to tune in for the whole thing, or they may listen to a bedtime story over several days or whatever. So please keep your ideas coming, ladies and gentlemen. This is, you guys have become absolutely integral to what we do on the show. And, if you have ideas that you'd like to see, it doesn't mean that I'm going to do every idea that you guys send, but it's just great to hear what you guys are thinking, because if I don't choose your idea exactly, I may go, that's not a bad idea, but this, and make something else based upon your ideas. So I love to hear them. So let me know. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Make sure you're following us on Facebook. Our Facebook group is Paranormal Portal Radio. So you go to facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio. But please check out our podcast too. And they are on iHeart, iTunes, Pandora, Spotify, Google Play. It's really cool when I go through the analytics and I see where people are listening to it, because I get this whole 130 or more different listings of places where people are listening to our podcast, different services, and most of them I've never heard of, but it's really cool. So it's kind of neat. But anyway, that's what I know. Oh, Tony's in here. Hey, brother. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. That's awesome. So tonight we're going to do the ghost stories. And by all means, ladies and gentlemen, the phone lines are open, 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. I'd love to hear from you. If you guys have anything going on, or, would like to say hello, by all means, I'll do my best to answer the phone. So let's get to some of this entertainment that I've been promising you. I just sit here yapping for a while. I do get some of those messages too, like, oh my God, you spent 5 minutes just slapping your gums. Those actually crack me up. Anyway, let's get to the good stuff, shall we? All right, the first story I want to bring to you tonight is actually coming from my old stomping grounds of Minnesota. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a transplant from Minnesota. Let's see what's going on in Minnesota. It says, I'm telling my story of what happened in my room of the ghost that was following my friend. She's sensitive and can sense if there's a ghost or no ghost around us. She didn't know that there was a ghost following her, but my mom could sense a joking around ghost following her, or otherwise known as mischievous, I guess. So when my friend spent the night over at my apartment, she found this light up ball and she was playing with it. And she set it down by my stereo speaker, where I have a crystal sitting on the table to protect my room. And a couple of minutes later, the ball was on the crystal. No one can touch them, or evil spirits can come in. Well, I don't know. I'm not really familiar with that ideology around crystal tuning and cleansing. Maybe that's true. I've not heard that. I think crystals can be incredible tools. They're believed to amplify energy and to help different crystals for different kind of energies or reasons. But I've never heard that other people shouldn't touch them. But I guess it kind of stands to reason that when you touch something, you do share energy with it, and it can change the imprint. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a crystal purist, so Forgive me. But maybe there's something to that. I've never heard that before. So I was flipping out on my friend, and she was saying that she swears she didn't put the ball on there. And I was like, okay, whatever. I can have my mom bless it again in the morning. Then like an hour or two goes by, and my friend says she saw a dark shadow in the mirror. Before all this happened, I had a demonic spirit trying to hurt me, so I'm freaking out, saying that is going to come back for me. And my friend is saying, no, it's not. Calm down. Everything's going to be okay. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to sleep. My friend woke me up up at 5 or 4:30 in the morning, and she's telling me she couldn't sleep all night because she has a hearing, or because she was hearing pacing on the roof, rather. Starting all the way at the head of the bed was, starting the way the head of the bed was, oh, okay. So it started on the roof about where the head of the bed was, and walking towards the closet and disappearing, and then she heard, after the closet pacing, thunder loud bangs by the closet, and then the drawers were opening and closing, and then it sounded like someone hitting the wall, and felt a cold feeling in my room. After she told me all that, we ran out of the room to go get my mom and tell her what happened. So she got some sage and sweetgrass to burn and then re-blessed my room. And after my mom blessed my room again, we couldn't go back to sleep. So we just stayed up until me and my mom had to go visit the family because this happened on Christmas Eve. Not the best written story, but, again, I don't know about the whole crystals thing. Coloma. Live from the ghost town of Coloma. Paranormal Portal. What's Coloma? I don't even know what you're talking about, Duke. All right, so let's get another story up here because there's lots more night ahead of us. Wait a minute. There we go. Okay. I'll pull up a handful of them here and we'll just go through them. I don't know how long these are, but I got all the time you guys need because that's how I roll. I'm doing my best to keep an eye on the phone, so if anybody needs to call in, by all means do that. This one's kind of long. It's from Jersey, New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen. When my grandfather came home from World War II, he purchased land in Bound Brook, a small city in central New Jersey. He built his own house on an empty lot, and this lot had only been home to an old barn, which he stripped down to nothing except for the stone basement, which he subsequently buried, and the house was built in front of where the barn used to be. And the covered basement became the backyard. Then strange things started when I was about 5. Being a little girl and very attached to my mom, I used to sleep in her bed just about every night. I woke up all the time during the night, most of the time because I thought I heard noises. When I would comment on this to my mom, she would tell me that the house was just very old and that it was probably just the house settling at night. I can't tell you how many times I've heard house settlings. One night I woke up due to another strange sound, which I can only describe as one heavy footstep, and I thought maybe my grandfather had come up by the stairs since he still lived with us, so I sat up and looked expectantly at the door to my mom's room, and instead I saw a strange man walk into my mom's doorway, and he was dressed in overalls and a plain white shirt. Well, we stared at each other for a moment before he spoke to me in a clear, deep voice. He told me to get out, continuing to stare at me intensely. Since I was a child, I decided that if I stuck my head under the covers, he would probably leave me alone. I stayed under the covers for a few minutes, and then when I raised my head, seeing that he had actually disappeared. Still scared, I woke my mom and told her exactly what had happened, and she simply told me that I must have had a bad dream and that I should just forget about it. Years later, when I was 16, I brought up the memory to my mom, and she seemed really uncomfortable about it, and I had to press her to get her own experience. And apparently many nights she would feel someone get into bed with her and hold her. Oh, man, that is so creepy. Ugh. Thinking it was me, she would turn over to make sure that I was all right and that I had not had a bad dream. Instead, she would find absolutely nobody next to her. I asked her if she believed that I had seen her phantom bedmate, and she finally told me that she did believe that I had, and it was much more than a bad dream. Before he died, I asked my grandfather about the ghost that both my mom and I had encountered. My grandfather was not a very superstitious man, but he did not doubt that we had seen something. He told me that many times in the backyard he felt that there was someone there with him. He said that many times, when I was too little to remember, I would come running to him from the backyard crying about something scary in the backyard and refusing to go back there. It was then that he told me about the barn and that he believed that whatever it was had come from there. Up until the day we moved, I can still remember waking up in the middle of the night to noises and never feeling comfortable in the backyard. I can only hope that the people who live there now aren't bothered and that someday whatever it was in that barn will just eventually go away. That's a possibility. I don't know. All right, the next one we're going to read is coming from New Hampshire, ladies and gentlemen, New Hampshire. Oh, and by the way, if any of you for some reason are not familiar with what the Confessionals is, again, the Confessionals is a podcast, and it's run by Tony Merkel, and it's a wonderful show. Please check it out. He does a great job, just brilliant job with his format, with his sound, with his production quality. It's really top notch, and it is as well available anywhere you can find podcasts. So definitely check it out if you haven't. He does a brilliant job and gets some amazing guests on there. In fact, I'm gonna have to ask him, hey, get me in touch with that guy. No, I'm just kidding. I'll just start hitting him up. Hey, Tony, I need some guests. Who do you got? All right, this is New Hampshire. So it was a beautiful summer day until this happened. Sitting at home playing video games and watching television, nobody was home but me. What I experienced was very, very real. In the hour of 4, at 4, okay. Nobody had still come home, and I was expecting my sister to be home any minute, and that's when it happened. Footsteps in my parents' room. My parents' room is above the living room, where I was playing games and watching television, and I didn't notice the footsteps until I had turned the TV down, and they were really scary. First they walked towards the door, then back towards the window. So I went up to see if my parents were home. Impossible, I thought, because no cars were home. When I got to the top of the stairs, I checked the door. It was locked. I knocked on the door, and there was no answer, and I kept hearing those footsteps downstairs, but at night, they were up in the attic. There was actually one time I went up there, and the footsteps were gone, but all the nails that were hanging out of the ceiling were now bent. Another true story is when we were living in my uncle's house. My parents were gone, and it was me and my sister and her friend, and we were sitting down watching a movie, and my sister's friend had gotten up to get something to drink, and we paused the movie, and that's when we heard them. People downstairs in the basement shooting around the pool table, and when me and my sister got up to go check, nobody was there. We never heard those sounds again, but we were very wary of them. That's possible. I don't know. You know, that's the weird part is those phantom noises thing. And I don't really understand if those are actually ambient noises or if there's some kind of telepathy involved with those, that they can produce telepathic illusions to that effect. I don't know. There's so many stories where we hear people they're like, oh, we're sitting in the living room and all of a sudden the cupboard doors were slamming in the kitchen and we could hear dishes flying and exploding everywhere, crashing and glass shattering. And but we went in there and nothing was wrong. It was absolutely pristine. And that comes up an awful lot. So I think it's either a tactic to induce fear, which is a sort of surrender. And you know, when you're afraid of something, you are acknowledging something has a power over you, and that can weaken your aura, which can, if it's a dark entity, could make you more vulnerable for some kind of attachment or some other oppression or something else. But it's so important to not feel fear or not allow yourself to feel fear as much as you can in a haunting, because quite honestly, a lot of them just boil down to you putting your foot down and saying, no, this is not going to happen. This is not okay here. and having a dialogue. I think some, and close to 90% of hauntings cease when the homeowners just put their foot down and say, no, I acknowledge you're here, but no, this is not okay, and this is not going to happen anymore. If it is, you must go. If you can live peacefully, then you can remain. And 9 times out of 10, the activity ceases or becomes much, much, much more subdued. So that comes up an awful lot. Excuse me. All right, so continuing on. Where did I get to this? Oh, yeah. I was actually done with it. I'm sorry. I'm a little scattered today. I don't know. Put your foot down on the leg button. Way to play it into the script, Duke. I like that. Very cool. All right, hold on a sec. I had to sniffle, and that's gross in a microphone, so I'm just doing it for you. I do it for you. Okay. This one is Michigan, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to Michigan next. I sometimes look up at the chat room and go, what the hell's going on? I don't understand. All right. Michigan. I live in the dorms on campus in Eastern Michigan University, and while strange things tend to happen to my roommate, I usually just shrug them off. I was raised in a rather non-traditional, psychically sensitive family and was brought up to not fear the paranormal. Wow, you'd swear this is scripted. I swear. That always boggles my imagination that I'll say something and it'll just be a theme in the next several stories. It's just weird. That's the Portal, ladies and gentlemen. I, honest to God, do not pre-read these stories prior to airtime. I don't have time. So I just pull them randomly from a few sites and just roll. So that's cool though. But we do respect it and still know how to protect myself from it using shields and simple incantations or rituals. And this has always been more or less like second nature to me, and I've never felt truly threatened by any presences around me until recently. Christmas break rolled around this year, and my roommate went home for the day, or went home the day after her classes ended, and I've slept alone in our room before, and I was leaving as well the next day, so it wasn't really a big deal at all. And when I went to bed that night, however, things felt somewhat different. I shrugged it all off, figuring it was just I was just overtired, and closed my eyes. But as soon as I did, I got an exceedingly clear mental image of an older man standing a few feet away from my bed, glaring at me. This was disconcerting, but I just opened my eyes, counted a few sheep to get rid of the lingering image, and then tried once more to go to sleep. After all, it was probably just my imagination, and I've seen similar mental images before, ranging from people I've met in my life to elephants and tutus. Okay. Though this wasn't exactly a dancing pachyderm, it was hardly unusual. Excuse me. But still, I couldn't sleep. I kept getting the feeling that there was something near the foot of my bed, standing in the doorway to my dorm room. And this reminded me that I hadn't locked the door before laying down, so I reluctantly stood up to go lock it, and I didn't want to walk through those few feet of space. It felt like there was something there that I didn't want anything to do with. I quickly locked up and dove back into bed, closing my eyes tightly, and for several long moments, everything seemed to be okay again. Several years ago, I began learning how to use my energy to gently influence things, pendulums for the most part, though on occasion in crowded areas, I would use it to subtly keep people away from my personal space, and I could form a barrier that would discourage people on a subconscious level from getting too close. And I've always done this to some extent when I was younger, but have only recently begun doing it on purpose. Learning how to do this has made me more aware of my aura and of my energy that surrounds me, and sometimes I can tell when someone is thinking very hard about me, just based off the changes in my energy. I bring this up because I began to sense changes in my aura. I'm not a huge fan of this word, but it's most clearly gets across my meaning, so I felt like someone was playing with my energy, perhaps sucking it away, but this has happened a time or two before in my bedroom at home, but there, all I need to do is tell it rather forcefully to stop, and it does. I did that in my door room, but nothing happened. So I then put up that shield that I've been using for so long, but still nothing happened. And as I did this, I began to sense a sort of shape that went along with the bad feeling at the foot of my bed. Whatever it was, reminded me of the velociraptors from Jurassic Park. It was non-human and somewhat small, but still quite dangerous. Finally, I imagined a sort of energetic bomb going off, filling the room with bright white light, and the being seemed to vanish. And I haven't noticed anything out of the ordinary so far, now that we're back. But then again, it's only been 2 days, and I'm hoping that whatever it was, it left for good. So the whole idea of shielding is really, really powerful. It's okay, we don't understand you. Thanks, Cha-Cha. Cha-Cha. What the hell? Why'd you have to choose that name? Oh, but the thing with shielding is it's a very potent exercise in order to protect yourself. Now, shielding is just, a prayer is shielding. A religious icon that you believe in is a form of shielding, like wearing a crucifix or something for a Christian, or, having certain crystals on you can be forms of shielding. But oftentimes you just have to focus on yourself, like cast and bring up an image of yourself in your mind in like a meditative state, or just relax and do it and focus a bright light surrounding you that is a shield. I've heard of several different examples, and one that came up kind of recently I thought was pretty interesting. And I had never considered this before, but I ran into a discussion where somebody was talking about their shielding technique, and what they do is they envision themselves surrounded by mirrors which are pointed back away from them. So in other words, whatever comes at them is reflected back to source, whatever source sent it. And honestly, that becomes I think it becomes a double whammy in a sense, because not only are you protecting yourself from any kind of energy that might come into you through malicious or otherwise intense. Sometimes it's not always somebody trying to attack you, but if we truly are energy, and everything is energy, and we are energy, and our actions are energy, and our words are energy, then consider that, in biblical terms, the Bible says, let no unclean words pass your mouth. Now, that's not profanity. That has nothing to do with profanity, but it means in the sense of spirit. Let nothing of unclean spirit pass your mouth. That's what I believe this means. And so basically, whatever you observe spiritually in your life, our voice is truly an incredibly powerful tool. And it can be used for incredibly beautiful things, like giving someone hope that is not feeling like they're very hopeful. It can encourage someone to try a little harder. It can soothe somebody that's having a real bad time. And it can make people laugh. It can make people cry. It can make them happy or sad or whatever, angry. You can make people angry with words. So there is power in words, and words are literally the first form of manifesting the energy of our spirit or mind into the world. And so when people are talking poorly about you, even if they're not right there to you, talking to you, that energy does come to you. I mean, those kind of things do find the target. They do find the source, or the intent. Energy always follows intent. It's like one of the biggest metaphysical laws. Energy follows intent. So by doing shielding exercises like that, even if people are talking smack about you, and most of us don't get too bothered by that, but it maybe can have some sort of effect on our life. Maybe it'll just take things out of whack just a little bit or whatever. So if you ever feel like someone's, coming down on you, and this isn't me trying to, give you ideas or give you a spirituality or anything, but shielding is a powerful exercise. And whether you shield yourself in prayer and know that the light of God is surrounding you and protecting you, or you shield yourself with your, the universal energy, or whatever you want to define it as, But it is powerful. So I thought the mirrors was a good idea, though, because it not only keeps things from getting to you, but it also reflects that back and makes it like maybe a kind of instant karma, so to speak. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting and thought I'd share that with you. Again, I'm not trying to, tell you what to believe or not to believe. I'm just, I think that all faith is beautiful as long as it gives you a wonderful feeling inside. So let's continue on and get to the next one. And this one is coming from Michigan. My parents bought a small 2-story ranch just a few cities over from our old house rather, and the house on Buckingham Street. And it was I was just 9 years old at the time, so I spent the remainder of my summer after the move in our backyard playing on the swing set or setting up my new bedroom. My parents had given me the entire upstairs, a light green room with beige carpeting, a big walk-in closet, and 2 attic doors, one by the landing and one across from my bed. I don't know, that already feels wrong, doesn't it? Putting a kid right up by the attic. Like most children today, I had my own TV, which sat on top of my desk just across from the foot of my bed, and for whatever reason, I enjoyed watching TV more than I should have, and I had a bad habit of leaving it on when I went to sleep. And I was also really selective about which channels I watched. I hated the news. I didn't particularly care for older or more adult-oriented shows. I always switched between Nickelodeon, Disney, and Cartoon Network, and at night, I'd eventually fall asleep and watching reruns of the Rugrats or Dexter's Laboratory or something, and to be perfectly honest, I don't remember exactly what cartoons were on, but I do know that they were bona fide animated cartoons and very popular for the era, and that's all I ever bothered with. Nothing particularly strange happened in that house for the first couple of years. I heard my name being called occasionally, even while at school, but once I became fed up with the constant hearing of Brittany. I yelled for whatever it was to shut up already, and that was the end of that. We still had our little Shih Tzu, Mickey, and decided to buy a little white... What? Bitch... They call it a Bichapoo, or Bichapoo. It's a Bichon, Frise, and Poodle mix. To keep him company whom we named Fritz. Mickey didn't particularly agree with our reasoning and tended to ignore little Fritz. When he was old enough, Fritz learned to climb the stairs and sometimes would visit me in my bedroom, and that was a rare opportunity for him because of his size. I began to see Fritz in my room more than usual, or at least I continued to see a little white dog sitting by my feet or sitting in the middle of my floor, and when I reached down to pet him, I'd grab at air and realize Fritz was never there. What was more strange is that after a matter of months, I caught myself seeing the same little white dog out of the corner of my eye, but Fritz would always be outside or next door or in the basement, and I tried to pass it off as nothing, and for a while it worked. I only saw the dog in a couple of places, anywhere in my room, and in the middle of our living room. I simply assumed that I was so used to seeing Fritz that I simply imagined him around the house when he was gone. End of story. But then things became a little less easy to ignore. It was nighttime, and I had once again forgotten to turn off my TV before I went to bed, a classic stunt pulled by yours truly, and I was awoken at around 2 a.m. to flashing lights and the sound of a grown man's voice. I opened my eyes to see the television was still on, and it wasn't Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, or Disney. It was Turner Classic Movies. Oh, that's wild. I didn't watch Turner Classic Movies. Deciding that I must have rolled over onto the remote during my sleep, I turned the TV off and tried to get a bit of shut-eye, but I was awoken again almost at 3 a.m. to find that my TV was on once again, still playing Turner Classic Movies. Frustrated, I shut the TV off and placed the remote as far away from my bed as humanly possible, and finally, sleep. 4 a.m, I had woken once again to find that my TV was, in fact, on, but this time it wasn't Turner Classic Movies blaring from the TV. It was the voice of Lucy, and I could see the little icon for Nick at Night in the bottom of the screen, and I actually liked I Love Lucy, but I didn't like that my TV kept turning on by itself throughout the night, usually to channels not meant for my viewing pleasure. And I also didn't like that the remote was no longer on the other side of the room where I had put it, but laying neatly on the foot of my bed. I shut the TV off one last time and shoved the thing under my pillow, and I'm glad to announce that my my television set stayed off, or at least didn't wake me up, and the remote remained under my pillow. At the time, even though I was puzzled by the incident, I ignored it to the best of my ability. I was still trying to convince myself that the little white dog was only a figment of my imagination, one that longed to see Fritz, I assumed, and that I must also sleepwalk, and that was clearly the only and least frightening solution to the problem. If only those were the only solutions I needed to find. About a year or so later, I'd been listening to music, reading Wuthering Heights. I know I was only 11, but I really did enjoy the book. Getting bored, but not yet ready to sleep, I decided to pretend I was Catherine Earnshaw, and I was running from Heathcliff, and I wanted to stray from the storyline just a tad, and I eventually changed my story completely to being a rock star. And this got boring also, and I found myself playing with a pair of sunglasses I found in my desk. When I heard my mom's voice, loud but calm, from the bottom of the stairs, she said, "It's okay, Brittany. Everything will be okay. Don't worry. Everything will be okay." As she was speaking, I started to walk to the landing, completely confused. As soon as I was peeking around the banister, the voice stopped. No one was there. I climbed down the stairs. "Mom?" I assumed she had gotten up to smoke a cigarette or something of the like, so I stood there for a bit, but she never came inside. Her bedroom being right next to where I was, I decided to take a peek, but her door was shut completely. And upon opening it, she was fast asleep against the wall. I mentioned the incident to her the next morning, but she thought I was insane, so I dropped that one real quick, and I never really came up with any explanation. I wasn't tired, I wasn't thinking about my mom, I wasn't sad. I decided to shove it to the back of my mind for a while. Another year passed, and my best friend at the time, Dana, and I had gotten a Ouija board, and I had never used one before. This is usually where it goes sideways. But my mom said it was stupid not to bother. She is usually very defensive regarding things she is afraid of, but Dana started to bring it to my house, and eventually we made our own. We started to talk to a person named Lilac, supposing we actually did talk to anyone at all, and decided that she was evil. I don't really remember all the details, but I'm sure a lot of this stemmed from our imagination. The only things that really stood out, however, was a dream I had that Lilac was walking down a dark street as a white glowing figure, and I was staring down on her from a balcony. And it was warm outside, and the setting seemed to come straight from Aladdin. But I was caught off guard as she suddenly appeared beside me on the balcony, and she grabbed me around the neck with the intention of choking me to death. A few days later, I was walking down the stairs, and I felt pressure on my back, as if being pushed, and I fell down the steps until my elbow caught the banister, and I stayed out of my room for a while. I'm not sure if I had imagined that or any other experiences, but I do know that the summer before we moved out of that house, I was visiting with a friend who lived down the street from me, and her grandfather was telling me about the history of all the houses on our street. Because we lived in a suburb, just about every house was built the same as the one next to it, and he was one of the first people to purchase a home there. And then he said, "Yeah, I remember that old woman once lived in your house before the family that sold it to you, and I can't really remember for sure, but I think she had a little white dog." Huh, that's pretty cool. So she was actually seeing a little dog. Very interesting. Let's see what's next. Let's pull up some more. We got time. We got the time. If you've got the beer. Wasn't that a liquor commercial or something? If you've got the time, we've got the beer or something like that. I don't know if that was like Olympia or Old Milwaukee or something like that. I don't know. All right, the next one. Connecticut. My wife and I have been searching for our dream home for almost a year, and finally one warm April afternoon we found it. The house is located in a small town near Haddam Court. Our dream home was just miles from anyone. A long drive down a private dirt road, about a mile and a half long through the woods, brought us there, and there it stood in the clearing. The 11-room, 3-story home was a grand sight. Although, after being vacant for a number of years, it needed a lot of attention. The grass was brown, a rusty old Chrysler sat in the driveway, and there was a murky old pond around the back. The house had been occupied up until 3 years ago when the owners entered a nursing home, and she had passed away a few years ago. We purchased the house from her niece, who was heartbroken to see it go after being in the family for over 60 years. We moved in 3 weeks later, and the first day quickly turned to night, and it was quiet, almost too quiet. My wife was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner, and it was almost 10 p.m., and I went out into the yard to have a cigarette, and I heard something moving around in the woods. And I thought it might be a possum or something, but for some reason it made me feel very uncomfortable, and a feeling came over me that I can't explain, and I felt as if I were being watched. I quickly returned to the house, and a short while later decided to retire for the night. I was awakened by a loud thud shortly after 2 a.m. I sat up in bed and listened, and after a few moments of silence, I heard what sounded like something being dragged across the floor above me. My wife was still asleep, and I got out of bed and headed towards the stairs leading to the 3rd floor, and as I stood at the bottom of the stairs, I could hear the floorboards above creaking. I slowly climbed the stairs, filled with fear, my heart beating faster with every step I took. My chest tightened and heaved with every breath, and I was at the top of the stairs staring down at the long hallway, and the door to the room at the end of the hallway was partially open. I heard what sounded like whispering. Paralyzed with fear, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, and I felt so cold, and suddenly the door flew open. Still paralyzed, I found myself staring at a tall figure in a black hooded robe. Ooh. I suffered a violent headache, my heart felt as if it were going to explode, and then everything went black. I awoke hours later in the hospital, suffering from a fractured skull, 2 broken ribs, and a shattered knee. It seems that I passed out and fell down the stairs, and all the noise woke my wife, who found me at the bottom of the stairs, and I told my wife what had transpired on the 3rd floor, and she seemed to look at me with a bit of disbelief, and I pleaded with her not to go back there. There was something very evil there. She blamed the whole ordeal on my habit of sleepwalking, which, by the way, I haven't done in several years. After a short stay in the hospital, it was time to go home, and I reluctantly returned to the house, and my wife had helped to convince me that I must have been sleepwalking during a nightmare. All seemed peaceful, everything was unpacked, and I settled down on the sofa for some rest. My wife seemed content in the new house, and she told me that she set up her sewing reading room on the 3rd floor, and that nothing unusual has happened up there. It was just a dream, and I needed to get over it. Over the next few weeks, my wife seemed to change. She became very quick-tempered and verbally abusive. She has even gone into some very violent tirades and broken things for little or no reason. I still hear noises and feel as if there is something around us, but when I mention this to her, she becomes enraged. She spends most of her time in her sewing and reading room, and most nights seems to sleep up there. She has become quiet and withdrawn, rarely leaving the house, and only for long walks in the woods when she does. She has cut all contacts with family and friends and hasn't ventured off the property in months. The only joy she seems to get is when she feeds the stray dog that comes by every evening, and that dog seems to be the only concern to her these days. Our marriage has become very strained, and I don't come home very often. I spend most nights at a friend's house, and I barely begun to tell most of the story, and will be posting it in several chapters, but My main hope is to convince my wife to leave this wretched house. Yikes. Huh. That's too bad. That's a terrible thing. Now, there's a second part, another part that was written by the same person. So, okay, yeah, this is it. So this is also from that same person in Connecticut, and they said this is the next continuation. It's now been over a month since we moved into the house. An almost crippling feeling of hopelessness, desperation, and extreme sorrow washes over me whenever I am there. It feels as if I am doomed, as if God has abandoned me, and I can't put into words the feeling that has come over me. It's like eternal darkness in my soul. I hear voices coming from empty rooms, things turn up missing on a regular basis only to appear at a later time in their original place. I heard what sounded like my kitchen being destroyed, glasses breaking, things being thrown, cabinet doors slamming, but then I entered and nothing was out of place. What did I just say? See, there's the serendipity of the portal right there, ladies and gentlemen. I've started reading the Bible aloud as I walk through the house, and as I read the Bible, doors have slammed, windows have rattled. I've heard banging on the floors above me. On one occasion, I heard a frightening voice say, Your God is ailing and he can't help you." That's creepy. One evening, I dozed off on the sofa while watching TV, and I was jarred awake by the volume of the TV going to full blast. I opened my eyes and saw a young man standing over me. He looked to be in his early 20s. He had filthy shoulder-length brown hair and filthy clothes, and as I lay there, staring back at him, he gave a smile that revealed the most disgusting brown teeth I have ever seen. He then walked towards the dining room, and I arose and cautiously followed him, and when I entered the dining room, it was empty, but there was a putrid smell lingering in the air. I started to notice why it seemed to be so quiet. Although the house was surrounded by a large wooded area, I never heard birds chirping during the day, nor did I ever hear crickets at night. The only thing that seemed to live in the woods was a stray dog my wife had adopted, and she quickly befriended him and called him Shadow because of his jet black coat. Shadow is a large black-haired male sheepdog, and I believe he is a slow-moving old boy who comes around for his free meal every evening, and Shadow won't enter the house and never seems to come any closer than 10 feet from the back porch. Strangely enough, he seems to have no fear of the woods and retreats there every night. And I often hear Shadow howling incessantly in the woods at night, and I don't know what it is about Shadow, but I feel safe when he's around. I just wish I could get him into the house at night. Over the past few weeks, my wife has become severely withdrawn. She spends nearly all her time in the room on the third floor. I've heard her talking to someone up there, but when I mentioned it, she became extremely defensive and said, I'm trying to make her sound insane. I tried to point out the change in her behavior, and she becomes enraged. She started screaming, cursing, smashing dishes, and then stormed out of the house and into the woods. It was well after midnight by the time she came back, and we were able to sit down and talk, and she admitted that there was several presences in the house and that she had been in contact with some. She said they needed us and wanted her to bring me in. When I asked her what she meant by that, she became agitated and stormed up the stairs, and she shouted from the top of the stairs, "He's getting stronger. He will return." I wonder if something is using her or if something has driven her insane. I don't know. Sounds like you guys need some help. Some serious cleansing needs to happen there for sure. We got time for one more, I think. One more anyway. Maybe two. All right, so this is coming out of Louisiana. This one's real short. We'll read a couple of these, I think. My closet scares me. It's coming from Louisiana. Did I say that? I'm sorry. If I did, I'm getting old. My closet scares me, the ever-loving heck out of me, and I'm always scared when I open the door or step inside to make my choices. I put my dresser in there so that I could have a little more room in my bedroom since my closet is a walk-in and it wasn't a problem. Well, my fear started when a few years ago, a boy in my hometown killed himself, and the way he did it was he hung himself. Friends of mine were close to him, and I had gone to church with him. We weren't friends or anything, but I knew who he was. One day I climbed up to the top of my dresser, seeing as I had to get something down from the shelves that were almost to the ceiling, and then all of a sudden, I felt as if there was a hand around my throat, and I couldn't breathe. I had tears in my eyes and everything as I came down. My cousin was there at the time, and she was scared because she saw the look on my face. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was scared, and I just looked up to where I'd been just a few minutes ago, and there was nothing weird about it at all. I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know if it was the fact that the boy had just lost his life. He'd been on my mind, but I only knew who he was. Or was it something else? Something that might have wanted to harm me? Please let me know what you think. I don't know. That's a tough one. Could be. Doesn't hurt to get a little faith on that. Smudging is easy, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever have doubts, smudge or open a Bible and read some holy verses or whatever resonates with you. That kind of stuff is easy. If things get worse after that, then you know you got a problem. If they get better, well, then I guess you've taken care of the problem. Texas is next, and this one's kind of a medium-sized story. All right. This happened about 40 years ago in San Antonio, Texas, and it was about 5:30 in the afternoon, and my parents had gone to grocery shopping, along with my brothers and sisters. I didn't feel like going, so I decided to stay home. I was on the phone talking to my best friend when this kid came in through the front door, stood in front of me, and just started to scream. I dropped the phone, and as I got up, the kid ran outside, and I tried to chase after him. I was surprised to see the screen door was latched, though, from the inside, and I was totally freaked out. I picked up the phone and told my friend Rudy what had just happened, and he said he had also heard the scream through the phone. Needless to say, I waited outside until my parents came home and relayed the story to them. I described the kid as maybe being about 5 or 6 years old, and he had Asian features. My mother told me that on several occasions our neighbor had mentioned to her that she would see a little boy sitting on our front porch, but thought nothing of it, thinking it was a relative, and that was the first and last time I ever saw this kid. My parents sold that house to my older sister about 15 years ago, and she had it as a rental home but could not keep renters. She eventually sold the house to her son Charles, my nephew, and Charles must have been living there for about 6 months when I got a call from him asking if I would be available to help him move. And I said yeah, and asked him why he was moving. He told me that one night he was in bed and heard what sounded like a ball being bounced around. He got up but saw nothing. And a couple of nights later, he was awoken to someone screaming. And as he stood up in bed, he saw this kid standing at the foot of the bed screaming, and after a few seconds just vanished into thin air. Now, when I experienced this at age 13, my sister was 18 years old and unmarried, so Charles had not been born yet. And I don't recall ever mentioning what I saw 40 years ago to Charles or anyone else. I asked Charles if he could describe the kid, and he said maybe 6 years old, and he looked Chinese or Japanese, but he couldn't be sure, as it all happened so fast, but there was no way he was staying in that house. The house has been sold since then, and I've been tempted to go by and ask whoever's living there if they've experienced anything out of the ordinary, but I don't want to alarm or scare anyone either. Would like to hear of it from anyone with similar experiences. That's all kinds of creepy and wrong. I think I'm going to read another one here. Hold on. This one's pretty long, though. I think I'm going to skip that one and read this one. This one's nice and short, a good one to end on. All right, so this is coming from Texas. I woke up one Thursday unable to go back to sleep, and I didn't bother to check the time because I was sure that it was almost time for school. Facing my wall, I laid in my bed waiting for my mom to come in and wake me up for school, and suddenly I heard my door open, And I was sure it was my door because my door is made of metal and makes a big clanking noise when you touch it. And footsteps neared my bed, but I didn't turn around because I was sure it was my mom. And then I felt someone sit on my bed, and I could feel the person's weight on my bed and their body on my legs. And I closed my eyes tight and hoped that my mom would let me sleep a little longer. But she didn't say anything, and after about a minute of sitting there, the person got up and the weight lifted off, and I heard more footsteps and finally my door closing again. I went back to sleep, and when I woke, it was because my mom had come to wake me, and I asked her about the night, if she had come in, and she said that she hadn't gotten up all night. Still confused, I asked my dad, and he'd not gotten up either, so then I knew that something else was in my room that night. Still, my cousin spent the night a few weeks later, and he slept in the living room couch. And in the morning, he told us that he felt someone sit on the couch while he was laying awake in the middle of the night. And unlike me, he turned to see what it was, and he said he saw a dark silhouette sitting on the couch, wrapping himself in the covers and hoped to sleep again. Really freaky. That is freaky, ladies and gentlemen, but that's how it rolls here on the portal. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you guys for being here. Oh, Wes, good to see you, brother. I didn't even know you came in. You could have called in. But anyway, I hope you guys are great. Thank you all for being here. And of course, I'll be back tomorrow night again for more of the bedtime stories. Again, please check out the podcast. It's out there everywhere podcasts are. You should be able to find the Paranormal Portal podcast. Check it out and subscribe so that you don't have to worry about it. It'll just be delivered to your device. And that's the beauty of the podcast. You don't have to have an internet connection continuously. You just have to have it long enough to download, and you can listen to it later. So what's not to love? That's what I'm thinking. So thank you all for being here, being a part of the portal. And I guess I'll talk to you guys tomorrow night, same time, same place. So have a great Tuesday. I guess it's Tuesday tomorrow. Yeah. I was going to say Monday, but no, we already did that. So have a great Tuesday, right? Let me look at the calendar. Yeah, it's Monday today, right? Okay, have a great Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow night. And then Don will be back on Wednesday for the 2-hour show. So don't miss any of it, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great night. Take care. Love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. All right, guys. Love you, and sweet dreams.